Why are Australians not concerned over the American takeover of Australian English? I got this book called That's the Way It Crumbles by Matthew Engel, and it talks about how Americanisms are taking over British English, and it's a huge problem in their country. Australian English has been bombarded with Americanisms ever since the introduction of sound film in Australia with I believe the first film was called The Jazz Singer and it was released in 1929. And then they also had the talkies through people like Dorothy Dix, where, people would just listen to Americans on their bedside table through the radio. Historically, it's something Australians have been pretty upset about. On page 92 it says, "Yet Australia was going through a similar angst to the British about American influence, especially once the talkies arrived. In fact, there was an extra dimension between the triangular tournament going on between of what Australians of that era love to call the King's English, the new American slang and the dinky-D Aussie vernacular. Stories about the impact of American on Australia's language drew a huge response locally, as in Britain, and authority figures could be every bit foggy-ish." Now, a lot of words that Australians picked up in sound film were phrases like dating, petting, wisecrackers, and gold diggers. Also, words such as soda, package, and show entered into our vernacular at that time too, through those talking films. But for having a much smaller population than Britain, Australia is even more prone to outside influences, and the irritation caused by Americanisms can be even greater. There has been a long concern that the rich Aussie vernacular was being submerged. A news report in 2005 said mournfully that many younger Australians are now more likely to say hi than g'day, and a vacation rather than holiday. Bloke and mate, long regarded as quintessentially Aussie, are giving way to dude and bro. It reflects that we are still somewhat insecure about ourselves, said Professor Rolly Sussex of Queensland University. On the great battleground of words, Australia is somewhat further along the Americanisation path than Britain. According to Bruce Moore, chief editor of the Australian National Dictionary, trousers and pants are now interchangeable. Chips would normally be sold in packets, though fish and chips and hot chips are clearly understood. And the highway are full of trucks, though we would know lorry as being pommish. In the housing market, Moore says, a clear class distinction has emerged. If I was buying, it would be an apartment. If I was out of money, I'd rent a flat. We do talk of sharing and flatting with someone, and biscuits remain standard Australian, although cookies are widespread. But even in a country where not much is sacred, this is the point where Australia dug in its heels. Oh, and look at this. An article published by The Guardian in 2005 said that mate was in danger of being banned at the nation's government. Has origins in Australia's colonial past, according to Sue Butler. So, in making Australia using less of its own words, originally British words, we're actually becoming less Australian. So, Americanism is destroying our country by stealth because people think it's hip, cool, that's another Americanism. But yeah, something to think about because our language is a huge part of our identity. We have to hold on to it.